W. McCaskill, educator, historian, public speaker, and your company is?
John W. McCaskill, History Alive.
Very good. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and History Alive?
Well, History Alive teaches the principles of leadership and teamwork using history as a vehicle through which to do it. History's been my thing since 8 years old. And all 3 of my master's programs are in history. My first was military history. And what I found as I was matriculating through the halls of academia, that the majority of my papers leaned towards African Americans in U.S. military history. So, you know, as I said, history's been my thing, and I do the reenacting thing as well. But I don't just do World War II, I do as early as Revolutionary War period to the 1960s.
Oh, good. I see future shows then with you. Very awesome. Very good. Okay. Well, very good. So why in particular, I guess, considering World War II, do you do the Tuskegee Airman impression?
Well, years ago, we were greeting World War II veterans at the World War II Memorial. And as I said, you know, I had a lot of different impressions, including Civil War. But as I did programs at the World War II Memorial, I would get pieces of World War II memorabilia, whether jackets, pressure hats, whatever. And I ended up inviting a group, Allied Airmen's Preservation Society. And they are World War II reenactors, and we hit it off. And I ended up joining the group. And from that point on, I just stayed with the Tuskegee Airmen impression. And their story is an absolutely incredible story. And it's an honor, really, for me to be able to do that. But it's absolutely fun. But their story, it's an amazing story, not only when it took place, but even it affects us today as well.
Very good. So again, how and where then do you do the Tuskegee Airman impression?
So normally I do it quite a bit, as I say, with Allied Airmen's Preservation Society. If I am hired to do public speaking events, whatever, I will dress in period attire. If they ask me to do it, I will do it then. And my job, there are opportunities for me to do it on my job as well.
Okay. All right, so you were talking about, I guess, the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. Can you tell us a little bit about how and why they were formed?
Well, so right before or right around the time World War II begins, they started the CPT program, Civilian Pilot Training Program, which taught college students how to fly. There was no attachment to the military, but everyone knew that if we ended up in World War II, we would have a cache of pilots from which to choose. The Tuskegee Airmen were authorized in 1939, and shortly after that, the 99th Pursuit Squadron was started. They originally in Chanute, Illinois, which is up north. The Tuskegee Airmen experience, and that includes anyone who had anything to do with it at all, consists of the 992 pilots who got their wings, about 14,000 ground personnel who were non-aviators, and some of them, believe it or not, were women. We just discovered a female Tuskegee Airman, I think it was in 2014, Miss Amelia R. Jones. She's passed now. Matter of fact, when we met her at World War II that September, she was in hospice. Wasn't supposed to make the trip, but by the time that thing was over with, she said something that made me think that maybe she's a part of this experience. She didn't think she was, but she ended up being inducted into the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, and she received the Congressional Gold Medal for her participation as a Tuskegee Airman.
That's wonderful. It's amazing.
So yeah, it was an absolutely amazing story for us.
Very good. Okay. So we're going to take a minute, John, and show a clip of what you actually do. We're going to show you in action, in character, as a Tuskegee Airman.
Sure.
Let's take a look. Very impressive, really amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So can you speak a little bit, I guess, specifically about that impression, the uniform, getting the kit together, in the reenacting world it's called a kit or gear. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, well that was at the Reading Air Show 2019, and we're right next to the airstrip, and so there are aircraft around the entire time. You saw the tents, we've got quite a few tents. All of my colleagues are dressed out as well. You saw me in my Class B uniform, which I would probably wear if I was flying. I'd have a flight suit over it, or if I'm just walking around and it's not a dress type of situation, that's the uniform I would wear. And so, yeah, we would, once you step into the camp, you have literally gone into the time capsule. There's nothing that suggests present day. Everything is back, and even in the mornings before the crowd comes in, we make sure that nothing is present day is seen. And that's pretty much what we do. I mean, we go through flight briefings, even the food that we eat, Spam and eggs, it's 1944, 45.
I didn't know that. I knew they did, because we got a real good look at your cook, who is, again, could be a character actor all on his own. The camp is amazing. It really is like walking back into World War II. This is an amazing event. And they honor the veterans, they honor history. The men who do this do a wonderful job. So we got lots more for you. We're going to go to break. Stick around, don't touch that.
The Tuskegee Airmen were an all-black fighter squadron, the 332nd Fighter Group actually, who did bomber escort, which meant they put their life at jeopardy to make sure that the B-52 bombers got home safe.
It offered me the opportunity to be a pilot. I like to look back. When I was a young man, I looked back and I thought about the Buffalo Soldiers, and I tried to amplify the things that they had done, and hopefully that the young persons that are coming behind now will try to amplify the things that I've accomplished.
Well, it's important for the younger generation to know, first of all, the history of the past, but mainly that in order to overcome obstacles, you have to be excellent. The Tuskegee Airmen stands for excellence. We were people who were in college, we were leaders of our group, we were athletes, we were valedictorians.
And it's men like this that help to provide the freedoms that we enjoy, and pave the way for specifically African American men to do their part in the war effort, not just World War II, but all the major war efforts that America has been involved in. And I just have the opportunity now to say thank you. Thank you for your service, sir, and your devotion to your country. And
for 92 years, and I hope 92 more.
92 years, that's what I'm saying. He's young, looks good, too strong. Hurting my hand, but that's a whole nother conversation.
It's an honor to be a part of this experience and this journey. To be able to stand and talk to living history it's really amazing.
And I'm a little overwhelmed because the president's about to watch our movie.
He recognizes the heritage that we bring to invite us here and to see this wonderful movie, this exciting movie, is really top-notch. You will be sitting in your seat wondering what's going to happen next. You'll enjoy it.
We hope you enjoy yourselves. We're going to be bringing in popcorn for everybody who didn't get popcorn. God bless you. God bless the United States.
Well, welcome back. We're here with John W. McCaskill, World War II reenactor, historian, public speaker, owner of John W. McCaskill History Alive. That is his company. Actually, before I get too far afield, why don't you give us the website?
The website is www.jwmhistoryalive.com.
And there, everything you'd like to know about John W. McCaskill History Alive. Now, my next question, moving right along, is how and where did the Tuskegee Airmen serve in World War II?
Well, when we think Tuskegee Airmen, everyone is familiar with the 99th Pursuit Squadron, which was the first group to go over, and they started actually in North Africa before they ended up in Ramitelli, Italy. But when they went overseas, there were 3 other squadrons underneath what we call a 332nd Fighter Group. They were fighter pilots as well, single-engine fighter pilots. When they shipped out, they pretty much went directly to Ramitelli. And so pretty much they're in the 15th Air Force and that's where they served the entire time. However, there's another group of Tuskegee Airmen that we're not as familiar with, the 477 Bombardment Group. These guys were training to fly B-25 Mitchells, which were multi-engine aircraft. The war ended before those guys went overseas, but their claim to fame is there was the Freeman Field incident, which they had officers' clubs, but the commander tried to keep it segregated by saying that these guys were trainees, they weren't officers. And about 101 of those guys went in to protest. It was a nonviolent protest, and they were all arrested. And the black press got a hold of it, and eventually I think they were all let off. I think one got fined for striking an officer. But those guys were going to fly bombers. So as I said, you had 992. And as I said, you had support individuals, including women, who were part of the Tuskegee Airmen. And so those who saw combat in Europe, and others, as I said, were still home at the time that the war ended.
So outside of the Tuskegee Airmen, can you talk a little bit about the overall African-American soldiers' experiences in World War II?
Well, I'll be honest with you, the experience depended on who you talked to. I wrote my thesis on Colonel Harry Stewart, who just put out his book. And he said when he came home, he said that when he was overseas, it was the first time that he was afforded the courtesies of an officer and a gentleman, and realized that his education, he had to pursue his education when he got back home. When he came back home, he said he didn't really have any issues coming off of the boat. But if you talk to other individuals, particularly Colonel Jefferson, Alexander Jefferson, who's in Detroit, he says when he came down the gangplank, now this is after he's put his body on the line to defend freedom and liberty, he says there is a white corporal at the bottom. He's got a sign that says white to one side, color to the other. So some of those individuals had to deal with that. There were instances of individuals being lynched in uniform after they came home. And so, even though we tend to talk about the better parts of World War II, where we triumphed over Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo, there's a part that we don't talk about.
It is, and I think it's important to have the conversation because it's the elephant in the room, as it were. And I think there's a way to address it that can spark, into understanding and continue this conversation and continue the dialogue. So I'm very glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
I agree.
Very good. And then I guess kind of going from there, going into modern day, what about the participation of African American people in the reenacting hobby?
Well, I have not seen that many.
I was just going to say that, yeah, and I think that's another conversation that we probably ought to have.
Absolutely. We just did Reading, as I said, I think out of about 1,400 reenactors, I counted maybe 3 of us who are African American. You don't see it much. And I'm not sure why that's the case, considering that blacks served valiantly during World War II in a lot of different capacities. The Montford Point Marines, 761st Tank Battalion, the crew of the USS Mason, the Triple Nichols, who were paratroopers, who did not go overseas, but actually what they did was they fought fires here at home from the Japanese who were learning about the jet stream. They were dropping incendiary bombs that were dropping in the United States, and they didn't make it public not to panic the people, but a lot of those guys, the Triple Nichols, they ended up fighting those fires. And of course you had just under 2,000 African Americans at D-Day on June 6th. And you don't hear much about that. And all the footage that I had seen, I had not seen that.
Yeah, I know.
So even as early as Pearl Harbor, Dory Miller, who was a mess attendant, manned a machine gun and is credited with 2 Japanese, or should I say aerial victories, and blacks were not trained on gunnery practice. And after that, they actually ended up training black. Everybody had to be trained on gunnery techniques. Unfortunately, he ended up getting the Navy Cross because they didn't think he would get anything higher than that. He was actually, who pinned him? I think Admiral Nimitz pinned him. But he was killed in 1943. He should have been on a war bonds tour around the country, but he was on the USS Lipscomb Bay when his carrier sank. He was lost at sea. But that was one of the first African Americans. And there were, no one got the Medal of Honor during the war, but I think after the war they went back and looked at what some of these individuals did, and I think 7 African Americans received it, but that was later, and 6 of them had already passed at that point.
Yeah, unfortunately. end, at least someone was recognized. So, all right, well, we have one more clip of John McCaskill in action, in uniform and character, speaking a little more about what it takes to get this impression together. Let's take a look. Very good. And I think that gives a really good overall description of, again, the kit, the gear, what you're wearing, what it takes to get it together. And as we all know, and as I hope you will all come to understand, reenacting is not a cheap hobby. It's a passion, it's a drive, it's a love of history, it's a love of doing what you do. Most reenactors, most of them are not paid to do this, am I right?
That's right.
We go out in the heat and in the cold. Can you tell me a little more, I guess, about History Alive and the different impressions that you do? Because I'm not kidding. I think we could maybe have some more shows here.
Well, let me say this. I certainly wouldn't want the price to discourage someone from doing it if they wanted to do it. You don't have to go out and buy all of this stuff overnight.
Good point, yeah.
Stuff comes in, and you talk to us, and we'll tell you, oh, you might want to get your utilities first or whatever. And actually, one of the pictures that you have of me is in my fighter gear. Right. And it takes, and one of the exciting things about this is finding these little deals, either on eBay or someone selling it.
It's like every reenactor ever, you never have enough stuff.
You never have enough stuff.
You never have enough stuff. Yeah.
You actually look for new cars based on how much stuff you can carry.
Thank you, I know, oh my gosh. I've been bugging my dad for an SUV for 2 years now. I have outgrown my Chevy. Yes, the pile just gets bigger. Well, John, we're going to take another break, but we'll be right back.
Because with everything that Dr. Brown and others have done, the approach to the work was never to be a hero. You wanted to just what?
Well, that's not totally true. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and we were all very competitive in the black community. We all wanted to be heroes, whether it was the best dancer, the best scientist, the best baseball player, the best orator, and we're all very competitive. Yeah. And the one thing gets lost in this Tuskegee story is that we really did think we were the best. Individually, we thought we were the best. Collectively, we thought we were the best. We didn't necessarily want to be heroes and win medals, but we damn sure wanted to show that we were excellent and could do anything that anybody else could do. And as I said, the big message of this play, of the Tuskegee Airmen experience, is that excellence overcomes prejudice, excellence overcomes obstacles, and that's what the Tuskegee Airmen were about, and that's what we're still about. Because in many places, you take the exam, and the officers would not rate it correctly. Lee Archer, my friend, who was our ace pilot, took the exam 5 times before they finally admitted that he'd scored 99 after several of his white friends had gotten in with a lower score. So we knew we were making history. The question was, what is your role going to be? And that's where the individualism comes in. We wanted to fly. Many of us grew up looking at airplanes making models, writing stories about them. We wanted to fly because aviation was the frontier part of our society, just like space was the frontier part of society in the late 60s.
I told you that the first time I went up in an airplane, I went up with J.O. Clinton. And I called home in 1944 to let my mother know that I had been up in an airplane. She thought airplanes were coffins with wings on them. And I had to influence her to let me go into the service. But my mother told me one thing. She said, when I started to flying, she said, you know, they can buy more airplanes. And it was a thrill. My first solo, I didn't do any of the things that my instructor told me to do. I went out and joyrode. I just flew around Alabama and just looked out and said, look at this little fella from U Street that can fly an airplane.
Well, welcome back. We're here with our guest, John W. McCaskill. And so I'm sure you have a few more things to say to us, a few more interesting tidbits about reenacting in general, and specifically what you do.
Well, some of the greater moments I've had doing this, meeting World War II veterans, the people who we are trying to represent in media, and I've met so many Tuskegee Airmen, and one has just recently passed, Colonel Robert Friend. He was living in California, but he was a tremendous individual. And my experience with him was absolutely amazing. I've got pictures of him when I met him at the World War II Memorial, and I've seen him 3 times, and so many others who I've met. And for me, getting something from them that I can hold on to for the rest of my life and actually pass it on to the next generation, that's absolutely, it's priceless for me. I don't just do World War II, I also do Civil War, World War I, Revolutionary War, Reconstruction period stuff. So what it does, if I'm presenting a particular topic and also tying that topic into why it's important today, I can be in a period outfit that will be visual to people. So that's what I do. And of course, you know, I do tours, historic tours throughout Washington, D.C., and that's pretty much what my business does. As I said, teaching the principles of leadership and teamwork using history as a vehicle through which to do it. And it's absolutely exciting for me.
It really is, and this is one of the most important things that I think we have all found as reenactors and living historians, is that especially when young people are engaged, because I don't know about you, but my dad has been dragging me to reenactments and battlefields since I could walk, and I think that's one reason it just really, it impressed me, and it was just such a significant thing for me to, again, have history come alive. That's the idea of living history. It's not dead, it's very much alive, and it informs on every aspect of modern life. And I am again and again so impressed by what you do and what the other reenactors and living historians do. It's amazing. It's a great gift. It's a great gift that they give and you have given all of us. And I just, it's a passion. And again, I really thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that about wraps it up. Well, that's another episode of Time Capsule. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us next time when we bring you more history.
decided I had to do something for the war effort. I heard about the waves in the newspaper in San Francisco, and at work, you know, everybody was talking about it. They thought it was so terrible that women were in service and we were all going to get pregnant and be a burden on the taxpayers and all this stuff. So I wanted to take the dare, and we're in the streets and so forth when D-Day hit.